The most terrifying collapses in history never begin with a bomb. They do not start with missiles streaking across the sky or with an atomic flash that blinds the world in a single moment. Real destruction begins quietly, invisibly, when people slowly lose faith in the value of their own work, when effort no longer guarantees survival, when a full day of labor can no longer buy a single loaf of bread. This is the story of such a moment when an entire nation woke up one morning and discovered that yesterday's salary had become worthless overnight. This is not a story about explosions or invasions. This is the story of Germany. On November 11, 1918, the guns of World War I finally fell silent. Across Europe, church bells rang and crowds celebrated the end of 4 years of industrial slaughter. But in Germany, the silence carried something darker. The country had lost the war, yet most ordinary Germans did not fully understand it. For 4 long years, the government had told its people a carefully constructed lie. They were told that Germany was winning, that the enemy was collapsing, that victory was only a matter of time. The sacrifices they were promised would all be worth it in the end. The war itself had not been financed through painful taxation, but through borrowing on a massive scale. The logic was simple and seductive. When Germany won, the defeated enemy would be forced to pay the bill. The problem was that Germany did not win, and suddenly all those borrowed promises came due. The collapse was swift and humiliating. Kaiser Wilhelm II fled into exile, abandoning the throne that had symbolized German power for decades. The empire disintegrated almost overnight, replaced not by stability, but by chaos. Revolution spilled into the streets. Armed groups clashed with police. Cities echoed with gunfire. Factories shut down. Millions of soldiers returned from the front lines to find a country that no longer had work for them. Out of this turmoil emerged a new political experiment, the Weimar Republic. It was a democracy born not from hope, but from desperation. It was unloved, deeply mistrusted, and accepted only because there seemed to be no alternative. And this fragile new government inherited something close to a corpse. The state was drowning in debt, the economy was shattered, confidence was gone. While Germany struggled to stand, the real nightmare was taking shape far away in Paris. At the peace conference, the victorious Allied powers were deciding Germany's fate. France, in particular, wanted revenge. Having suffered invasion and devastation on its own soil, it was determined to ensure that Germany would never again become a threat. The Treaty of Versailles was not merely a peace agreement, it was a punishment. Germany was forced to accept full responsibility for the war, a declaration that branded the nation as the sole aggressor. This clause became the legal foundation for reparations. The number that followed was staggering: 132 billion gold marks. It was a sum so enormous that it was never truly meant to be paid. It was designed to crush the German economy for generations. Even worse, Germany was forbidden from paying in its own paper currency. The Allies would accept only gold or foreign currencies, like the US dollar or the British pound. Germany had neither. The Weimar government now faced an impossible dilemma. It had to pay reparations abroad while also supporting millions of wounded veterans, widows, and unemployed workers at home. A strong government might have raised taxes or confiscated wealth from the elites who had profited from the war. But Weimar was weak and afraid. Leaders feared that heavy taxation could spark a communist revolution like the one that had just engulfed Russia. Every responsible option seemed politically suicidal, so the government chose the easiest path, the path weak governments throughout history have always chosen when confronted with impossible debt. They turned on the printing presses. At first, nothing dramatic happened. Germany had already abandoned the gold standard during the war, so printing money felt like a continuation of existing policy. In 1914, $1 was worth about 4 German marks. By the end of the war, it was worth 8. Inflation existed, but it was manageable. Life was harder, but it still functioned. The government used freshly printed money to pay teachers, police officers, and civil servants, then used that same money to buy foreign currency on international markets to meet reparations demands. Each month, the presses ran a little faster. Each month, the value of the mark slipped a little further. By 1921, the exchange rate had fallen to 60 marks per dollar, then 90, then 300. Prices crept upward. Bread became more expensive. Savings accounts slowly eroded. People complained, but they still believed the situation was temporary. A mark was still a mark. Surely things would stabilize. The government pleaded with the Allies for relief. British leaders sympathized, understanding that a bankrupt Germany could not buy British goods. But France refused to budge. It needed German payments to repay its own war debts. If Germany would not pay voluntarily, France was prepared to take payment by force. In late 1922, Germany missed a relatively small reparations delivery of coal and industrial materials. France seized this as a pretext. In January 1923, French and Belgian troops marched not in Berlin, but into the Ruhr Valley, the industrial heart of Germany. This region powered the entire nation, producing coal, steel, and manufactured goods. The plan was simple. French forces would occupy the mines and factories, seize resources directly, and ship them back to France. It was economic warfare disguised as peacekeeping. Germany could not fight back militarily. Its army had been reduced to a shadow of its former self by the Treaty of Versailles. Instead, the government chose a different weapon. It called for passive resistance. Workers in the Ruhr were ordered to stop working entirely. No coal would be mined, no steel would be produced. It was a national strike, framed as patriotic defiance. But this strategy came with a fatal flaw. Millions of workers were now unemployed. To prevent mass starvation and unrest, the government promised to continue paying their wages, and the money to do this came from only one place. The printing presses began to roar. This decision ignited the inferno. Before 1923, Germany suffered from inflation. After January 1923, it entered the realm of madness. Hyperinflation exploded as the money supply grew uncontrollably, while the supply of real goods collapsed due to the industrial shutdown. Too much money chased too few goods, and prices responded instantly. Shopkeepers raised prices the moment new notebanks appeared. Workers demanded wages higher just to survive. The government printed more money to meet those demands. The cycle accelerated beyond control. In January 1923, $1 bought 18,000 marks. By June, it bought 100,000. By August, millions. By November, trillions. Wages paid in the morning were worthless by evening. Money lost its function as a store of value. People no longer saved, they ran. The moment workers were paid, they rushed to shops to buy anything tangible. Shoes, potatoes, firewood, furniture. Objects mattered. Paper did not. Money became a hot potato, passed as quickly as possible before it lost more value. Daily life descended into absurdity. Banks ran out of space to store cash. People carried money in suitcases and wheelbarrows. A famous joke circulated about a man whose wheelbarrow full of money was stolen, while the cash itself was left behind. The wheelbarrow had value, the money did not. Prices changed by the hour. A cup of coffee could double in price between ordering and paying. Workers demanded wages twice a day. Wives waited outside factory gates to grab cash and sprint to markets before prices rose again. Doctors accepted sausages as payment. Barter replaced money. The social consequences were devastating. The middle class suffered the most. Teachers, clerks, pensioners, and small savers watched their lifetime savings evaporate in weeks. A bank account that once represented security became worthless paper. Widows living on fixed pensions starved. Meanwhile, debtors and speculators thrived. Those who understood the system borrowed massive sums of worthless money to buy real assets, knowing they could repay loans with near-zero value currency. Society turned upside down. Hard work and thrift became meaningless. More than money, trust collapsed. People learned a terrifying lesson. A government could destroy everything overnight. In this vacuum, extremism flourished. The left claimed this chaos proved